This morning comes from Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 to 29. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain came down, and the streams rose, and the wind blew and beat against that house. And it fell with a great crash. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teachings, because he taught as one who had authority, and not as their teachers of the law. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Please pray with me. God, we pray together the 19th Psalm, that you would make all the meditations and thoughts that go into our hearts, and all the words that leave the lips of our mouths pleasing and acceptable to you, O our rock and redeemer. Amen. When I read this text, I thought a lot this week about what we just sung about and read the scriptures about, and that is foundations. And I have an understanding of foundation that's pretty literal. I grew up in a very small town in Oklahoma. I had a very wonderful father and mother. My father, though, he had a philosophy. Just looking at some of you, you've got the same fathers. His philosophy was this. My mother did not agree. He always thought, well, why hire a professional to do something I could get halfway right myself? So, it was time to add on to the house. First thing you got to do, build a foundation. So we had moved from the trailer park to a little bigger house. It didn't take long before it needed to be a little bigger. So we built a foundation. He put the wood around. He went down to the local store and rented a bulldozer and leveled everything as well as he could. Took 2x4s. And just right. He just looked at it. It's just right. We got the cement truck out there, great big cement in the backyard. It all comes down that slide. I don't know the technical term. Filled it all in. Guess what? He's so proud of himself. Saved $50. He was so proud. Well, guess what? That night the rains came down. And that morning we woke up and we said, Dad, it looks more like a swimming pool than a foundation. It was water just sitting right in the middle of it. My mother said, right, I told you. That means it's time to redo it. She said that. So he went down to the same store. This time he rented 2 jackhammers. So he goes back home, and see if you know my father's philosophy. You rent them for 23 hours and 59 minutes. So the second you get home, until you get done, you start, because you can save $50. So my dad's friend Ron comes over. They're using jackhammers. It gets me 10 o'clock at night, still 2 jackhammers, midnight, 1. It's the only time in my life the sheriff has ever come and knocked on my door. So, Rod, we don't have any jackhammer codes, but this is not okay. So we stopped. It's 6 a.m., back with the jackhammers. So that's what I thought of as a foundation growing up. You build this thing once, and strong and sturdy. You get it right the first time, so when you build your house on it, it'll be there forever, right? That's a good foundation. That's how you should build a church. Someone did a good job with this foundation. Church is still here. It's a good foundation. I was reminded of this. I was doing a funeral for Betty Jean Fuel Clark. I wonder if you all know Betty Clark. She was a member at Kingsway since 1960. She died a few months ago. Her son Barron, good Tennessee name, he said, I have this memory of my mother. Just a few months before she died, we were home in Crockett Mills, Tennessee. I never heard of it. I said, that sounds like a Tennessee town I never heard of. We went back to Crockett Mills and went to the cemetery. We saw the old tombstones, Smith and Fuel and Jones. It's good Southern names. Then we went to the school. It wasn't there anymore except for the gym. She was one of the first women's basketball players ever in Crockett Mills High School. She was proud. Her picture was still on the wall. And then we went to the old homestead, that old white wooden house. And he said this story to me. He told me a story. He told the preacher a story. He said, well, preacher, I always heard growing up, there was a wind so strong one night, it picked the wooden house up, moved it 10 feet to the right, set it down, and all 5 of his kids just kept on sleeping. I said, well, did they move the house back on the foundation? No, it's still there today, 10 feet away. So I got to the funeral. The preacher didn't really believe this whole story. So she has 2 sisters. They're both in their 90s. I went up and I said, Miss Trula, can I ask you about a story? She said, well, certainly, Pastor. I said, you remember there was a night when the wind was so strong? She said, oh, yeah. It picked the house up, it moved it 10 feet, it set it down, all 5 kids kept on sleeping. She said, but you know what my brothers don't remember? Is we had the best place in the county to go roller skating. All childhood on that slab. But I was reading my Bible, and I think the way we've heard this story in Sunday school our whole lives, I think it's true and right and good. You know the story. Make a good, firm foundation so you can build on it the rest of your life, and that's how you'll live your faith. That's why we have Sunday school and teach our children. That's why. It's important and it matters. But if you read really closely, there's a question hidden in here. And the question is, what are the words Jesus is referring to? I'll just read it to you. The verse says, everyone who hears these words and puts them into practice. What are these words? When the rains come and the streams rise, when the winds are so strong they blow your house 10 feet away. What are these words that keep the foundation in place? But everyone who hears these words, what words? So I went back, found a few stories. And I went back, found a little sermon. And I went back and I found some teachings of Jesus. And I went back. We're still on the same day. I went back 3 chapters to find the beginning of these words. And do you know where I landed at the beginning of these words? Blessed are the poor, for they will inherit the kingdom. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the peacekeepers. Blessed are the peacemakers. I landed at the Beatitudes that we heard so beautifully read. I landed at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. And then I read this. These words means be the salt of the earth. Don't ever lose your saltiness. Whatever you do in life, be the salt of the earth. And then these words say be the light of the world. Go up on the hill. Be up on a stand. Be high up so people can see the light shining in you of Christ. Then these words says, do the law. That law, the Torah, it matters. But don't be legalistic or arrogant about it. That's not the point. These words say, don't kill people. Don't murder anyone. And don't even let yourself become angry. If you never become angry, you're not going to kill anyone. And these words, they say, don't have sex with people you're not married to. And don't even have lustful thoughts, and then you don't even have to worry about it. And these words say, don't make divorce become a good idea. A few of you have heard a story where it was. These words say, when you say yes, mean it. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. And before you say yes, think about what yes is going to mean. These words say, keep your promises. And don't use your promises to mislead or deceive people to make more money or make them feel bad. That's not what these words are for. These words, they get a little fancy. In the old Roman days, they say, practice lex talionis, an eye for an eye, but do it in the way of Jesus, which says, it's to prevent further violence. Not so that you have the right to take an eye. It's that when you get hit, you just turn the other cheek. And if you don't want to get hit, I suggest just walk away. These words say, will you take me a mile? You say, no, I'll just pick you up, take you all the way to church. I'll take you to the grocery store on the way home. And then I'll make sure you're safe at your house on a 24-degree morning. These words say, love your enemies. But they also say to pray, you get this, for them. That's one of the hardest things in the Bible for me. It doesn't say to pray about your enemies. You know, in old country churches used to stand up and share a prayer request. Didn't you ever have that happen? I can't tell you how many times somebody would stand up and share a prayer request that was really just an annoyance about somebody's daughter. That's not what the Bible says. It says to pray for your enemies. You can't pray for your enemy and not have your own heart be changed as well. Jesus knew that. These words say, give to those in need. But do it quietly. Do it humbly. Don't try to embarrass them. That's not what these words or this man's about. These words say to pray, and pray in this way. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. These words say to fast. And to fast in such a way that others don't see you, but it transforms your own soul. These words say, where your treasure is, you know the rest, there your heart will be awesome. These words say, you can't worship and hoard money. It'll ruin your life. It'll take your soul if it's all about money. These words say, don't worry or be anxious about what you can't control, but instead, take charge of what God has given you charge over. These words say, don't judge others. Treat them the way you want to be treated. Well, that's about it. About 40 things or so. It's the antecedent of sorts, about 40 commands. I stepped back from these words and I thought, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. That is so intimidating. If you read the Sermon on the Mount from front to back, if you really hear it out, you ain't going to do all that. That is so intimidating. I have never had one day I got that all right, not even close. But like good Jewish teachings, all the rabbis tell us they come in threes. So you get to the end of the Sermon on the Mount, which you think we just read, but it's not the end. Instead, Jesus says, well, let's give you some metaphors so you can digest this a little bit. When you got some choices in life, go through the narrow gate. When you got some choices on the orchard, pick the good fruit because you know it came from a good tree, and then go be it. And then this one. To end the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says this. When you build a foundation, when the wind is so strong it'll pick your house up and move it, make sure that foundation is also equally up to the task to keep your faith strong in Jesus Christ. So that when the tides rise up and when the storms come and when what you deserve happens and when what you don't deserve happens, you'll be ready. Before it ever happens, you'll be there because your foundation is so strong in Jesus. Build a strong foundation. Do it by practicing these words. So, there's something a little bit different about these words, though. It's a little bit technical. Every once in a while, those technicalities, they help us so much. In our Bibles, quite literally, if we translate it, it says, it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. It did not fall. That house, it did not fall because it had been founded. It seems like a minor technicality of grammar, but it's not. We have in the Greek text what we sometimes don't have in English, which is called an aorist tense, which is A-O-R-I-S-T. That means something happened in the past, and it's completely done, and it's over, and it doesn't really matter that much now. That's not what's going on here, friends. We've got the other one. We've got this aspect of an ongoing sense. You've heard this before. Think about the virgin birth of Jesus. Think about the power of the cross. Think about 3 days in a tomb. Think about the resurrection. Think about the ascension. Think about the bread and the wine we took. That's not